Who were our closest companions, our best friends, the ever-present source of comfort? Why, books, of course. I'm sure many of you, like me, found that it was reading that kept us going. It was reading that kept our minds alert and sane, and it was reading that gave us hope for a brighter day. Wisdom and sanity are really the need of the hour. Because literature really encompasses every aspect of human thought and endeavor. So really, we are a festival of ideas.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 13th Tata Literature Live, the brainchild of that man that we saw on the screen over there. And that's why it's fitting we've named our inaugural session For the Love of the Word, the Anil Dharker session. Because if anyone loved words more, I have not met them. I used to make jokes when he used to come up here and speak, and we used to chide about it. Now it's my turn, and I'm shaking like a leaf. I don't know how he did all of that. The last time, actually, we were in this space was a couple of years ago, and one of the things that we did was actually the entire audience gave him a standing ovation. And I think it's fitting that we're back here in this lovely home at the NCPA. And when the team and all of us were trying to put the festival together, we were thinking about it. Should we do it? You know, we've spent 2 years online. It took us, I think, 2 phone calls. One phone call was to the Tatas and Mr. Harish Bhatt, who's in the audience, and he went, yes. And the other one was to the NCPA, and they said, when are you coming? So it's really fantastic to be here. It's lovely to be back on ground. And we desperately, desperately need more forms and spaces like this, where conversations can happen, where we can share ideas, and we desperately need places where we can actually have conversations that are thought out and allow someone else to change our mind about something and witness that. And thank you all for being here, and thank you so much to our partners. And I mean, when we got off the phone with Mr. Bhatt and Mr. Santuk, as we were getting off the phone, literally on the other phone, you know, Godrej were back on and Kotak were back on, and it's just fantastic that everyone jumped on it, and it feels like it's something that we needed to do, and we're back here for this. So this year, while we've been putting the festival together, the team who is sitting right there in the second row, it's a small team. It's a team of Vinod and Reena and Sumana and Amy, who's Amy at the corner, and Shireen and Antoine and Tina. And it's a small team, but when we start putting it together, incredible themes emerged. Gender became a big part of the conversation, and I think that reflects in our festival this year. Crime writing has made a resurgence, and I think that reflects in our festival this year. Poetry. God, we need poetry. The sense of nuance, we need that, and that's come back. And we're really happy that this year the poet laureate for the festival is Geef Patel, and that's another massive thing that we're very, very proud of, Mumbai-based poet. Another theme that emerged, strangely, was war and conflict. And if you look through the programming, you'll see a lot of that is looking at those issues and the resolution of those issues. And therefore, it's also fitting that we've actually introduced a new award this year for someone who has been committed to writing about peace and conflict resolution. And this is the Rotary Writing for Peace Award, which is being given to Nandita Haksar this year. So that's another exciting thing that we're really happy about. And of course, performances, which is actually how I started at this festival, was to just bring and curate performances. And we have a fine lineup of stuff from Italy and from Bangalore this evening, and all sorts of things. And our Lifetime Achievement Awardee is from the performance arts and from the performing arts, Mahesh Elgunchwar. So there's a lot to do for the next 2.5, 3 days, both here and at our St. Paul's campus. My only advice is wear comfortable shoes, because there's a lot of walking and hopefully a little bit of running of getting from one place to the other. But thank you all for coming to Tata Literature Live 2022, the 13th edition of the Mumbai LitFest.
A very good evening to all of you. It's such a pleasure to be here physically in this space at NCPA for the 13th edition of Tata Literature Live, the Mumbai LitFest. This is our LitFest. This belongs to the city of Mumbai. This belongs to India. This belongs to all literature lovers. And I'd like to convey a very warm welcome to all authors, speakers, and all of you literature lovers who are gathered here in this auditorium. Ladies and gentlemen, it's such a privilege for us at the Tata Group to be associated with Tata Lit Live, the Mumbai LitFest. As we open the 13th edition of this literature festival, I'd like to echo what has already been said before me, that I believe we are so fortunate to be back again in this physical space, listening to the authors and the poets and the performers that we love. But even as we open this festival, for the first time after 2 years physically, I want to start by paying tribute to two people who have been associated so closely with this festival. Anil Dharker, who founded the festival, and Shashi Baliga, who was a key member of the organizing team. In earlier years, when I speak here at earlier editions, I would see them here right in front of me. I'd see them looking up with a spark in their eye, and I'd see them full of love for the written word. We miss them terribly today, and I'd like to pay very, very fond tributes both to Anil and to Shashi and say how much we miss you at this edition of the festival. But very clearly, I think the current organizing team, Amy and Quasar, and the organizing team members, as well as all of us in the Tata Group and the NCPA, and other sponsors of the festival, we will do our best to live up to the love that you had to make Tata Literature Live happen and become such an iconic literary festival. Thank you, Anil. Thank you, Shashi. I'd like to thank NCPA and Mr. Santuk for being such avid supporters of Tata Literature Live alongside the Tata Group, and say that there can be no better venue to stage this festival than this brilliant theatre, as well as all the theatres in NCPA where this festival will be conducted. So thank you, NCPA. Thank you, Mr. Santuk. At the Tata Group, our founder was a Parsi merchant of Mumbai, Jamshedji Tata, who lived in the 1800s. He founded the Tata Group in 1868. But his philosophy was that the community should be center stage in everything that we do, and not just another stakeholder in business. And one aspect of bringing the community center stage is art and literature, and that is what this festival commits itself to. In fact, Jamshedji Tata himself was an avid reader. Way back in the 1800s, when he was a young student, I am told that his favorite authors were Charles Dickens, William Makepeace Thackeray, and Mark Twain. I'm told that he used to recite the poems of the poet Robert Browning in his deep baritone voice after dinner to his family and to other friends with whom he had eaten. And I'm happy that this love of books has flown down to so many of us in the Tata Group. At this festival, I'm very proud that some of our very senior colleagues, like Mr. T.R. Dungaji, who has just written his memoirs of over half a decade, of over 50 years in the Tata Group, and Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan, who has been a director of the Tata Group for a long time, they will be speaking. But alongside, a young author like Dr. Purnima Dore will also be speaking at the session on smart incubation. So we are blessed in the Tata Group that the love for word, the love for books has come down over the years. We are also very proud that this year we have more than 125 authors at this festival. Over the years, we have had more than 1,000 authors speak from the stage. Last year alone, 8.5 million people viewed the online sessions. That's a fabulous number. And in addition, we are proud that not only do we represent English literature, but this year going beyond English. Last year we had celebrated Marathi literature, and this year we have sessions on Gujarati prose and poetry. And it will be our endeavor at Tata Literature Live to celebrate as many languages as we can that belong to our splendid and great country. Most importantly, we are meeting here after the pandemic, and I'm reminded of one of my favorite lines. I don't know how many of you love Lord of the Rings. I can see some hands go up. Yeah. And some people have put both hands up. But I remember some lines from Lord of the Rings. This is Gandalf speaking to Frodo, and this could well hold of our pandemic. He says, "I wish it need not have happened in my time," said Frodo. "So do I," said Gandalf, "and so do all who live to see such times." But that is not for us to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. And I'm sure with the time that was given to us during the pandemic and the time that is given to us now, a lot of us here would do one thing for certain: we would read books. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great evening.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I am truly delighted that the Tata Literature Live LitFest has now been revived after a lapse of 2 years, thanks to our old friend COVID. Although online interaction is the flavor of our modern time, I still aver that it is not half as interesting or involving as being among you and being on the stage and discussing matters inter se. This time, we will all feel the absence of Anil Dharker and Shashi Baliga, the two pillars of the LitFest. I have known Anil for many years, and the visits he made to our office at the NCPA were always interesting and filled with his knowledge of a variety of subjects ranging from literature to music to world events, contemporary scenes, and in so many different parts of the world that I wonder how he crammed it all into his fertile mind. The lack of support for culture and the unfortunate passing of values for what really matters in life, his analytical interpretation of today's political and social scene was not only wise and practical, but was predominantly common sense. He wrote extensively for us in our magazine On Stage. His column in On Stage was always widely read and keenly anticipated by our leaders, and he was given a free hand in discussing whatever was honest, original, and interesting. He was a relentless supporter for Lit Live at the NCPA, and our facilities were always made available to let his ability to draw in persons of great interest and stature from around the world to speak on a wide variety of subjects. We will miss him, but I am so glad that his companion Amy Fernandez has taken on the Mumbai LitFest mantle on his behalf, along with his esteemed colleague Kasar. Please give them a hand and promise them your support. We have to make this festival every bit as interesting as those curated by Anil. I wish her luck and the festival the success it deserves. The support of the Tatas in this venture is greatly appreciated, and their valuable ambassador of culture, Harish Bhatt, should be congratulated on his constant support for everything which is in the area of culture, and also supports the NCPA enormously in all its endeavors. Thank you, Mr. Vatt. And now, without much ado, I think I would like to wish you all a wonderful 2.5 or 3 days of intellectual pursuit while I go about my mundane responsibilities. Thank you.
हेलो चेक या हाय नमस्कार सबको सबसे पहले आई जस्ट वांट टू से कि आई हैड प्रिपेयर्ड दिस एंटायर सेशन इन हिंदी बिकॉज आई थॉट वी हैव अ हिंदी राइटर आई स्पीक हिंदी बट आई हैव बीन टोल्ड लाइक 30 minutes ago that we have to do this session in English. So I just, not a major discomfort, just slight lack of confidence on my part.
We are dealing with the translation, so that's easy. Translate.
Yeah, so I'll just be slightly underconfident through the session and maybe a bit, fumbling at a couple of places. But most of the job of handling the session is Geetanjali Ji. She has won an international booker, so I'm confident she will be able to not make me feel whatever underconfident. Thank you. So quickly, first of all, thank you for being here for this opening session of Tata Lit Live 2022, and thank you Geetanjali Shree ji for finding time for us in the middle of probably 2 most hectic months of your life, or probably at least the last 3 months have been probably whirlwind. So I'll just quickly read my introduction in Hindi, which I had already written. After that, we'll switch back to English, and I'm not trying to, and there will be a couple of, lines and short passages I'll read from the Hindi novel Ret Samadhi, the translation of which, Tomb of Sand, got the International Booker Prize 2022 for Geetanjali Shree ji and Daisy Rockwell, who did the translation. But I'm not going to compete with Daisy Rockwell ji. I'll just read the Hindi ones and not translate on the fly. So quickly, सिर्फ मुझे यहाँ से बात शुरू करनी है कि आपका स्वागत है समंदर किनारे वाले इस पुस्तक मेले में. ठीक है, आजकल लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल कहा जाता है, बट अल्टीमेटली पुस्तक मेला है, और उसी में इसकी सबसे बड़ी, मेरे ख्याल से द सोल ऑफ इट इज़ द जस्ट वी आर कलेक्टिंग अराउंड बुक्स एंड सेलिब्रेटिंग. दैट इज़ व्हाट अ पुस्तक मेला इज़. तो समंदर किनारे ये पुस्तक मेला हो रहा है, और समंदर जैसी एक किताब हमारे सामने है, रेत समाधि. ये किताब सच में समंदर में जितना पानी है उतने इसमें अलंकार हैं, बिंब हैं, फलसफे हैं. समंदर के पानी में जितना नमक है उतने इसमें किरदार हैं. समंदर के पानी में जितनी मछलियां हैं उस नमक वाले पानी को निगलती हुई, उतनी इसमें कहानियां हैं, किस्से हैं, और इन सब को जोड़ती हुई एक बहुत ही कमाल की भाषा है. अगर आप हिंदी, मेरे ख्याल से मैंने हिंदी पढ़ी है, ऑफ कोर्स डेजी रॉकवेल जी ने कमाल का काम किया होगा, लेकिन जो ओरिजिनल में जो जिस तरह की काव्यात्मक भाषा है, इसको उपन्यास की जगह महाकाव्य कहा जा सकता है, मुझे ऐसा लगता है. हर दूसरी पंक्ति में आपको कोई एक कमाल की कविता मिल जाएगी. I'll read some of the examples from the book where I feel the poetry is just stunning. और ऐसा लगता है कि ये उपन्यास किसी कविता के सपने में आया है और फिर यहाँ छपा है. That's what I feel. It's just to translate for people who are not well versed with Hindi. It feels like this novel, when I was reading, it felt like it was dreamed up by a poem. That's how poetic the language is. So thank you, Geetanjali ji, for writing this, for bringing this into this world for us to read and get, get onto another plane of enlightenment with your writing. So I will just quickly start with probably the most frustrating question you have been asked about how do you feel after winning the International Booker? And I'll add maybe a slightly less frustrating question after you probably answer the first one.
Well, before answering your frustrating question, I will say a few other things. First of all, I want to thank the Tata LitFest and NCPA for giving me this opportunity. It's absolutely wonderful to be here, and I feel so honored to be at the inaugural session and the Anil Dharker session. I really do wish, and I'm sure all of you do for other reasons, more personal than mine, that he was in our midst. I never met him personally, but I did read him, his articles, in all these years, and there was always something so current and relevant and absolutely worth reading. So I really do feel honored that I'm here, and I wish he was here, but anyway, just remembering him. He says, I'm going to handle it all. I also want to thank Varun for agreeing to talk with me, and I'm such an ignoramus that he asked me very politely in the green room just now whether I'm interested in films, and I gave him some long-winded answer, never realizing that I was talking to somebody who's written for some of these absolutely excellent films. And suddenly I discover it on stage, and I feel, my God, what's left for me to say? There's nothing for me to handle. Varun can handle it
Please.
all.
Oh,
Those are wonderful films, Varun. Congratulations. No.
Itna sharminda na kare. Thank you.
No. That's, well, he's first rate, and I'm so glad that I've got this chance to have a conversation with you about the Booker and how I feel. I really don't, it is a question which is asked of me constantly, but I never really know how to answer it. I feel a bit like when you were talking about the book, is that me and my work that he's talking about? Mm-hmm. So it's that kind of slight sort of wonderment and quite a bit of distance from the whole thing. Who is this? And one of the nicest things that happened to me in recent times, and I have to share it with all of you, is at a literature festival perhaps just some days ago or a few weeks ago, someone came up to me and said, "Ma'am, I just have to tell you this. You look so much like Geetanjali Shree." Okay. And I kind of looked at her completely sort of perplexed. And then I realized she was utterly serious. And I thought, yes, there is some Geetanjali Shree who seems to have, the stars have favored her, she's done something, and everything's come together, and something wonderful has happened. But that's her, and this is me. So I felt, that's how I feel after the Booker, that yes, something very nice has happened, and I have great respect for the Booker, and they've given me this recognition that's wonderful. I have something to do with it. That's really, really great and humbling. I love the way it's opened up the world for me. I have the chance of so many more interactions with such very different people. I also feel very pleased that somehow I am the medium through whom attention has suddenly got focused on South Asian languages, not just Hindi, but all other languages in this part of the world. And there is at the moment a lot of interest in what's happening in these languages. And I hope it's not just a momentary infatuation and there's something, which will sustain. So all this makes me feel utterly wonderful. And I thought to myself, one day, many years later, I'll look back with such, I'll remember all those moments and I'll think of what happened that evening and I'll think of some of these things that were said. at the moment, I'm just, like you used the word whirlwind, I'm going around, doing things, enjoying the interactions, not enjoying the traveling and, changing beds and bathrooms every day, and waiting to get back to my cave and quiet life of writing again.
Okay, thank you. So, how do you think it will change or impact the Hindi literature world, this award? Are you hopeful about it, or more needs to be done?
Well, certainly hopeful. I mean, I think, something happens and it focuses attention on an issue, and that has happened. So I think it's for people to realize it and, just use this opportunity now and support translations and, other language literatures, and go exploring in all these new worlds so much more. And the example which always comes to mind is Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And so little was known about South American literature till he got the Nobel.
Yeah.
And he got the Nobel, and suddenly, the world outside his country was focusing on that part of the world, and discovered so many Gabriel Marquez and writers as good and better. So I hope something like that happens, but it's not alone in my hands. It's about readers, writers, publishers, translators, funders, and everyone getting together and realizing that there is this moment and this possibility.
So, it's a big moment in your life, and this novel itself is a big moment, I think, in generally the literary world, award or no award. It's probably one of the, as I was saying, it's one of the most poetic things I've read in prose form. I'll just read probably a few very short lines just to make the point, complete the point I'm making. Basically, so the poetry or poetry-laden language. रात थी भी ऐसी कि जैसी काली चादर में ढकी चली और जगह जगह अंधेरे की ढेरियां लगाती जाए. I'm not translating, sorry. I just had one flash in my head of trying to translate, but no. Amma kitni choti hai. Amma is the lead character in the, if we can call her the lead character or one of the many characters, because it is a like ensemble of characters. But अम्मा कितनी छोटी है हमारी कमर से बालिश्त भर ऊपर. ये कब हुआ? Now, in this initial part of the novel, for those who have not read it, Amma, this 80-year-old woman, is kind of, she has cut off from the world and she's just hiding in her room. She's mostly sleeping under covers and all, and facing away from the home and facing towards the wall. So we are talking about her. Amma kitni choti hai hamari kamar se balisht bhar upar. Ye kab hua? When did she become so small? लिहाफ के भीतर वो अपने आप को कतरती रही क्या? Did she keep, कतरती is
like a mouse.
हाँ, लेकिन खुद को, हाँ, did she keep biting herself and eating up herself under the covers? I'm like, and I've read these lines many times now just to research and all, and to find questions out of these lines. And every time I read, even now, I get goosebumps just reading this kind of a description for any of the characters. Now, another line which I can actually translate by memory, but someone asks कि India कहाँ है, या so आपको पता है आपका पता भारत का है जो यहाँ से बहुत दूर है. Someone tells this lady कि you are from India, which is so far from here. This is in Pakistan. So Pakistani investigator kind of someone is asking this 80-year-old woman who has now crossed the border to arrive in Pakistan, and the person asks कि आपका पता भारत का है, your address is of India, which is so far from here, and she says वो तो जहाँ है वहीं है, तुम दूर हो पुत्र. India is where it is. You are far away from it. India is not far away. You are far from it. It's such a beautiful way, not just in terms of the language play, just as an emotion. We, places don't go away. We go away from them. That is the kind of, I would say, philosophy at the core of it. And the novel is full of so many of these beautiful observations and wisdom and cleverness, and and they are funny and they are heart-wrenching at in some places also. So I wanted to know, first of all, as I said, it is a Mahakavya, it is a grand poetry. I don't think English even has a word for Mahakavya. But to arrive at this kind of a narrative and this kind of a language, what kind of life have you lived to become this character who writes this kind of a novel? Maybe you can, just go into a bit of biography also, or whatever, your first memories of reading, your first memories of wanting to become a writer, and then first interaction or continued interaction with characters who are like these, who are like Amma, who are like Rosie, who are like...
Does anyone ever know the answer to a question like that? I think it's really impossible to tell what all has gone into the making of a novel, especially when it's a big novel, when the canvas is so vast. And it's a novel which took me 8 or 9 years to write. So it's just so many different things which have gone into it, and certainly not, it's not an autobiography. So I don't think my autobiography is really going to give us, straight clues anyway.
Yeah.
And I couldn't give you clues about how I've done what I've done, except to say that, look, well, I'll say one or two different things. I'll say there is an intuition which a writer and an artist is constantly nurturing inside herself, which is constantly getting honed by all her reading, her observations, her experience, other people's experiences, her history, her geography, all those various elements. And somewhere that intuition is, hopefully becoming richer and richer. And it is that which is guiding her when she's trying to write something, trying to do some creative work. It is that which is telling her somehow, that which is sort of pushing her to take risks and stopping her from toppling over, providing that balance at a completely impossible seeming stance as well. So I think it is that kind of audacity which the intuition is allowing the artist and the writer to go forward, and the work is getting done. But let me say the second thing. The second thing is also what the great Sarod Maestro Ali Akbar Khan once said. He said that initially, पहले मैं सरोद को बजाता हूँ और कुछ देर बाद सरोद मुझे बजाता है. So in the beginning, I'm playing the sarod, and after some time, the sarod is playing me. So I think that's another thing an artist and a writer, allows and enjoys and goes along with, and the dynamic of the work, the interaction with the medium is doing some of these absolutely strange things which come as a surprise even to the writer. And finally, if I may just sum it up like this, I'll say, look, imagination and creativity are two untamed beasts. They don't listen to anybody, which is a wonderful thing. Whether it is, controls of another kind, don't write this and don't do that, and don't do it like this and only do it like that. Whether it is the writer trying to, kind of direct it, they don't listen. They are wayward. And if you remember what Intizar Hussain said about stories, he said, "Kahaniyan to awara hoti hain."
Yeah.
So there is, they don't listen, and that is absolutely the wonder of it. And I think it's a risky venture. You might do something which will completely crash, or you might do something which is flat, or you might do something which flies. That's how it got made.
So, but you mentioned about intuition. Now, intuition for a writer is also, how I see it, is a practice, is a discipline in a way. So, what were your intuitions as a writer while, I mean, why did you go with Amma's story? Maybe a very simplistic question, but why did you find this character and her journey the most fascinating to make it the central part of a sea of stories?
You know, for me, Varun, often or almost always, it's not a big theme which gets me going. It's rather something fairly small and mundane from daily life. And what I've discovered is that the small is not that far from the big. They are not so disconnected. And the mundane is not far from the epic. And you are dealing with the mundane, and it actually takes on so many other dimensions. And like in this book, there's an image of the woman who's become small. It's that time of the day when our shadows are very long. You know, that time of I've forgotten, is it sundown or at what point that happens. But her figure, the real figure, is tiny, but the shadow is really long, you know. And it is as if it's a metaphor, you know, that, you know, something small actually goes into a long, very deep past and, you know, other sort of story and reality and whatnot. So I think somewhere it is that which keeps me going. And also, I often just start with, again, I'm remembering something which I've actually been sharing with lots of people in recent times. The great poet A.K. Ramanujan, he writes in his diary somewhere, and these are not the exact words, but just the meaning of what he says. He says that I don't go chasing the poem. I put myself in a place of that kind of quiet and receptivity where the poem will find me. So I think to some extent, that is my way of working. There's such a din of stories in me, around me, all the time. And in all these years, I'm sort of carrying those stories with me. And all I have to do is put myself in that place and that quiet and that solitude where these stories can come together, and the one which is ready for expression can come to the fore, and something can start happening. So what starts me off is some kind of very ordinary trigger. In this case, you spoke of the old woman and how she came into being. It was such a common image, and I think everybody is very familiar with it, of an elderly person looking completely down and out and sick and tired of life and the world, as it were, and looking like she or he is just waiting to die. You know, everything's over. So such a person, such an image somehow came to me, and I think it's there in every family, so I don't have to sort of think where. It was here, it was there. I mean, I've seen that image repeatedly. So just such a person who's lying in bed and she's turned her back to life and the world, it seems. That image somehow decided to, you know, inhabit my imagination, and it started growing there. And then it started doing other things. It started sort of stirring my curiosities, and I began to wonder that this woman who turns her back to the family the moment somebody comes in coaxing her to get out of bed, Is she wanting to just die? Is she really sick and tired when she says, no, 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 I don't want to get up? Or is she sick and tired of them, or the immediate life behind her? And she looks like she turns her back to them and looks like she's burrowing her way into the wall. Is she doing that because she wants to bury herself in the wall and that's it, bury herself alive? Or is she boring a hole through the wall and trying to come out to the other side into some other space of freedom and invent herself anew? And this is the image, and these are the stirrings which got me going. And before I knew it, the woman had risen up, the woman had bored away through the hole, and actually started living another life, surprising everybody, including myself.
Thank you. So you have, in the novel also, you have paid homage to Krishna Sopti ji. You have mentioned her. In your interviews, you have been mentioning how she has been an inspiration. Which other writers would you say have inspired you, not for this novel, but generally becoming a writer on this planet is a risky proposition anyway. Becoming a Hindi writer is a riskier one. So what propelled you? What were the books you were reading which made you sure that you want to do this?
Well, I'll tell you that, but it's not just about the books one is reading. I think it's a fascination with story which all of us have. From the moment we are born, we are fascinated with stories. We want to tell, we want to hear, and in some of us it grows into a bigger love and a bigger obsession, and we make it our main stay. About turning it into a profession, I think none of us do it because it's a lucrative profession. All of us know it's not a lucrative profession. All of us know there's something crazy about it. And all those who care for us, around us, they tell us that don't think of that as a career. It's not going to get you anywhere. So I think all of us know that story very well. So we do it because there is some kind of love in us for that, a passion in us for that, and we just carry on. I'll tell you one of the things which, stories all of us have in us, and all of us find ways of telling them. But what I think helped me in my childhood particularly, I think one or two things, and this is all guesswork, because these are not questions I ask of myself, so I have not sat and analyzed, how did I become a writer, why did I become a writer, etc. But because I'm asked these questions, I try and think back and I imagine and invent some more stories. So, but I think my childhood, which was spent in the years immediately after India became independent. So that was a very idealistic time. So while it was a confusing time also, but it was a very idealistic time. So on the one hand, there was this idea of British culture, then the English language being superior, good education being there through the English medium. So we were, all those who could afford it, the middle class children and the upper class children, they were all sent to English medium schools. So that level, I was going into English medium and learning that. But there was also an idealism about India being free, about our language and literature, something which is not there today in the same way. So in all these towns, they really venerated their poets and writers. And Allahabad, where I spent quite many years, Firaq Gorakhpuri, Sumitra Nandan Pant, Mahadevi Varma, these were just household names. And not just names, there was even the possibility of, listening to them, having them over. And all that was going into the making of some thoughts and some imagination and some being inside me. The other thing which was happening, Varun, in my childhood is that even if we were going to English medium schools, there were so many books of Hindi for children. and so many magazines of Hindi, you know. You are much younger, I don't know if you know Nandan and Chanda Mama and Parag,
yes,
and all these.
we had.
So we would get all those. So I never lost my language, and in a sense, within quotes, and I'm not trying to say anything revivalist or that kind, but I think I also remained rooted. I didn't become as deracinated as I think a lot of youngsters today might be, especially in big cities, you know, where they've lost the language, where they don't have access to those books and all that. So I think that kept me connected to many things, and somehow that provided a foundation which came in very handy later when I started writing. I mean, it all came back to me. All those sounds and smells and words and things which I never knew were there inside me, they all returned. I mean, childhood is a great time. I mean, it's really such a time of education. And all of it came to me and it started showing up in my writings. So I can just see that trajectory somewhere.
Okay. But coming back to the central character, or multiple, not just the central character, Chanda or Amma, there are so many well-detailed, fleshed-out female characters or non-cisgendered male characters in your novel. Now, there's a show called Olive Kittredge, which is adapted from a novel, and Frances McDormand, who is an Academy Award winner actor, she played Olive Kittredge. Again, probably a 60-year-old woman dealing with existential crisis and loneliness and all, and the novel is about that. So Frances McDormand, in one interview, she said the world doesn't need strong female characters. The world needs real female characters, ordinary female characters with just the complexities and ordinariness of daily lives and just well fleshed out. So first, so it's a two-part question. First is, do you agree with that? And second, how do you feel about your novel being called as Mahila Pradhan ya female-led novel? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? What are your thoughts?
Well, I certainly agree with the first part entirely. It's what I'm saying, you know, small and big are not, you know, distant from each other, and ordinary and extraordinary are not distant from each other. You know, I think they come sort of enmeshed in each other. And I think also behind the most ordinary lives and inside the most ordinary lives, there are many extraordinary stories that also go on. So there's nothing, you don't have to try to look for the extraordinary, you just live the ordinary well, and everything else just follows and comes with it. About Mahila Pradhan and, you know, sort of women-centric or whatever. It's not, you know, that's not my agenda. And I do get a little disturbed sometimes when they talk of a women's platform or a women's something as a separate category. I can understand the need for that in politics. So I can understand that there is a dilemma out there. You know, women have been made separate from the mainstream in some ways, and they have to, you know, make their space back into the mainstream, but they also need to hold on to some separate space as a new assertion. So I can understand it as politics. As literature, I'm not very happy to have those separate platforms, you know, for men and women. And about it becoming women-centric or Mahila Pradhan in some ways, I mean, like I said, it's not my plan, but somewhere in my intuition and in my being, it's come woven into it. But hopefully not just women. I think with women come everything else, and every other gender as well, and every other kind of being as well. I mean, it's not, you know, exclusively women for me. It's certainly women. I think there's lots to be said about women, lots that has not been said about women, but it comes with everything else in life and the world.
Okay, so I'll quickly just read probably 2 lines which you have quoted about Mardangi, which is masculinity.
This is terrible, it's like something being thrown at me, but you said this. How do I defend
because
it?
it goes exactly with what we are saying. तो रिवायत ऊपर वाले की इजाद नहीं ना, भाषण देने वाले ने संक्षेप में कहा, ऊपर वाले ने एक तरह बनाया, धूप ने उसे दूसरी तरह से कहा, मर्दानगी ने रिवायत का मर्दन किया। मर्दानगी लगभग हर रिवायत की तह में छिपी है। इस छिपने से अपने को कम मर्दानगी लगभग हर रिवायत की तह में छिपी है, यहीं तक पढ़ते हैं। बट डू यू think the Hindi literature world is a deeply patriarchal or strongly patriarchal world, and is it more difficult for a non-cisgendered male writer to make it?
See, I'm going to give I'm probably giving all roundabout answers anyway, and I'll give another mixed up answer. So, today, I think there's a lot of ferment in the country, and lots of voices which were not part of the mainstream, with literacy, with politics, have begun to assert themselves, and there are many more literary voices, now in the mainstream. Not just women, other categories as well. So at one level, one cannot complain and say that it's a world where women are are not given a say. Look at in the theatre world. Look at the number of very prominent women directors. By the way, I came to NCPA many years ago in the time of Vijaya Mehta. And I think for at least 3 workshops we were here, and I think lots of us were all women doing things. So anyway, so look at the art world, look at the theatre world, look at the writing world. There's so many women who are doing wonderfully. So at one level, there's nothing to complain about it, about this, about patriarchy here. But I think with all this, there is something, I would say, invisible. There's something systemic, which is still there.
Yeah.
Which is inbuilt into the way the world operates. Perhaps not just in India, but in most parts of the world. So that kind of systemic discrimination, I think, exists also in the literary world, not just in the literary world. That's why I'm saying it is a general point. Speak about me, I've had it very good. By and large, when I wrote my first stories, I did not... my first story in a journal was brought out by Rajendra Yadav, a well-known writer in Hans. Then when it came to sending it to a publisher, I thought, I'm just so new. Who do I go to? And it was my partner, now my husband. He said to me, so why are you scared? You go to the best one. And the best one was Raj Kamal, which was led by Sheila Sandhu, who was such a, everybody knows what a tremendous entrepreneurial spirit she had, and she set this up after independence. And so here was a woman, such a dynamic, like absolutely an iconic woman who had set up this publishing house, and I sent my stories there, and I was lucky that that's where my publication started. My book was published there. So I think there are all these absolutely visible women, who have made place for themselves, and people have had to look at them. But there is this invisible area which we all have to deal with, which is the systemic invisibility of women, the perhaps, not being able to accept as quickly in the case of a woman as you would in the case of a man, that here's a path breaker. There could be those stories. But I also think that, we have to take these things with a pinch of salt. We have to carry on our struggles, and we can't keep agonizing about them. We just have to go ahead and do it. We bring in our narratives, and कब तक नहीं देखोगे? तुमको देखना पड़ेगा ही.
Yeah, eventually you will win an international Booker, and yeah, the world will change around it. So now, probably a bit of a selfish question. I just love knowing about the routines of writers. I love. So just because like every writer has a routine, and like I just read like Murakami Saab, he wakes up at 4 a.m. to write, and Suzanne Sontag, she used to wake up at 8 and write till 2, and there are these certain routines and tics and tricks writers have. Do you have any certain tricks when you are in the middle of writing?
Let's link it with systemic discrimination, okay? Because as a woman, it's much more difficult for me to have a writer's routine. I mean, look at the number of women. This is something which I've always noticed, that women who wanted to do things very seriously often have, broken marriages. They are single. They have to find their way.
Yeah.
I hope some men are clapping as well. So I think that's something really to be noted, and I've discovered it in myself. I mean, this is when I have a very, very supportive husband, and he's very, very happy to be the man behind the woman, and doesn't try at all, to sort of come forward. He's very willing to hold fort, and stay in the background. But the system works in such a way that it's a different set of responsibilities of home and family that a woman has to deal with, and she has to make her routine between that. And that's why in this book there's somewhere, I think, about women writers being
there's a whole chunk.
They are ghanti or siti lekhan. So between doorbells and the whistle of the pressure cooker, they do their writing in between all that. So that is how they have to make their routine. And there's another brilliant line in my head which I've forgotten. But when I started, I had nobody knew me. Nobody knew that when I was, they thought I was researching. I was a research student, and I was doing some research work in my, the subject I was supposed to be researching in. They didn't know that I was writing. So that time it was like office hours that I kept. So from 9:30 to 10 till about 4 or 5, I would try to be completely alone with my work and with books, with the blank page, staring out of the window, pacing up and down, all that. But the better known I have got, the more I've lost that routine. The responsibilities have taken away that routine. And in this, since I got onto the long list, Booker has taken away that routine.
But while writing this particular novel in the last 7-8 years, did you like...
So I had to keep running away from home. Okay. So I would just run away to retreats or to other kinds of places, and I'd be completely alone. Really for like 2 or 3 months I would run away, and then again run away for 2 or 3 months, and just I'm sometimes amazed. I mean, I think I can say very proudly, very few people would be able to live in the kind of complete solitude, complete loneliness that I would stay in to be able to write. Okay. But I had to do that.
And thank you. But can you write in a crowded room, like in a cafe or something?
No, that's why I said this is systemic discrimination wali baat hai yahan par bhi. Men can do that. Because men don't, and that's why men and women continue to be different. They're not different because Allah Mia made them different. It's because men have made them different.
Men have designed the world for themselves, and then
so men can sit in the middle of even my husband, my very wonderful husband. He can sit in the middle of everybody. I mean, I just say, that fellow is painting the thing. Just make sure that he does this border like this, and I go away. And he's happily reading his whatever, sitting with his laptop, and he's never noticed, and something else is done out there. which a woman can never do, you know. So she cannot sit in the middle of everybody and everything and not notice what's going on there and what's required here, etc., etc. She has to, you know, more or less leave everything to be able to do anything.
Yeah, thank you. That made me feel very guilty with good reason. Thank you. Coming to, we have time for, okay, I'll take one last question from my side and then we'll open it for the audience. The novel is, I would say, subtly but very powerfully political. How difficult generally in today's times you think it is for an artist to remain political and to remain still free to create what they want?
You know, see, politics is something so, it's just so much part of our being. Again, another one of those things we don't really choose. It's there. You know, it's, we are living in a circus, and we are responding all the time to that. You know, and it has to be there in whatever we do, whatever we express, whether we like it or not. So I really think artists and writers don't really have a choice. You know, you can't, in very obvious ways, you might decide that, okay, I have to censor myself. I cannot, you know, like Gandhi ji called the Dalits, मैं तो भूल गई, क्या बोलते थे वो? Harijan. And the Dalits today object to that word. Yeah. So you have to become alert to that and say, okay, you know, you're not going to use that word. You have to say Dalit. That kind of becoming alert is possible. But otherwise, when it is some other kind of political control that is being imposed on you, you know, political writing. I mean, what is political writing? Everything is political writing. Everything is imbued with politics. You mention the word woman and that's politics. You mention the word third gender and that's politics. You mention India-Pakistan, that's politics. You mention intercaste marriage and intercommunal marriage and that's politics. So there's no getting away from politics. And as soon as you think कि हम ये ना लिखें वो ना लिखें तो फिर तुम लिखना ही बंद कर दो क्योंकि तुम जान ही नहीं सकते हो कि हम क्या ना लिखें कि पॉलिटिकल कंट्रोल वालों को परेशानी ना हो जाए यू कैन नेवर नो इट सम ऑफ इट कम्स विद गेटिंग नोन I mean, nobody has problems. I mean, a lot of us writers get away with everything we are doing because who reads? But suddenly, I mean, if you're the limelight is on you, then suddenly, but then it's so arbitrary. You know, the reason is not that you have written something which is objectionable or political, because like I said, politics is imbued in almost everything. The reason is that somebody wants to catch you out for something. So you never know, you know, it's so arbitrary. So the point is that artists and writers, I think, will always be political within quotes. I mean, there'll be different kinds. There'll be a more open politics of a different kind, you know, I don't know, leftist politics, this and that, etc. And there'll be politics of a larger whatever, more general term, you know, political. But writers and artists will always be that, either, let us say, living with risks and being that, or having a slightly more conducive atmosphere around them and being that. But writers and artists, if they're writers and artists, will continue to write anything and everything.
Thank you. हाँ, वो बीच में बात चली थी कि सरकार ईमेल पढ़ रही है आपके, तो मैंने मेल लिखा खुद को कि अगर आप ये पढ़ रहे हैं तो मेरे 4 स्क्रिप्ट रखे हुए हैं मेल में जो किसी ने नहीं पढ़े, बहुत दिनों से मैं भेज रहा हूँ, आप प्लीज़ पढ़ के फीडबैक दे दें, jaisa bhi ho. But so on that note, let's begin the Q&A with the audience. I think we have time for 2 or 3 questions. So let's be very smart with our questions and ask a question and not a statement. That will really help. Yes, do we have a mic for the audience or you? Yes, aa gaya. Haan ji.
Hi, Geetanjali ji. It's really nice that we are hearing you रूबरू. Thank you so much, and Varun, you are doing very well. I have 2 questions. बहुत सारे हैं, लेकिन आज 2 ही पूछूंगी. वरुण ने बोल दिया छोटे में बोलने के लिए. So one thing is that as because Amma is going Pakistan, so is it necessary, because even I am a writer, so is it necessary that a writer, if she is going to, you have to go to Pakistan, then only you can write what she feels over there. And secondly, how did you meet Daisy Rogel and Roswell, and how did you think of getting translated this book in English? So these are छोटे questions.
Okay, पहले सवाल का तो जवाब ये है कि no, it's not at all essential. I mean, there's nothing like if she didn't go to Pakistan, she wouldn't have, it depends very much on what your story is and what the protagonist in your case is up to. So it's not like Pakistan is the place that every protagonist of every novel has to reach. So
how much is that fiction and how much is fact?
Many women get to Pakistan.
I'm just asking when you write,
think,
so how much is
sorry.
combination of fact and fiction? That's my question.
Sorry, there are many more people waiting, so we
No,
can't
sorry, just say that last thing. Yeah. Just quickly, I mean, the last sentence I didn't...
Combination of fact and fiction, what the percentage?
अरे percentage कुछ नहीं होता है. So everything is fact and fiction. We never know. I mean, everything. It's not biography, not autobiography. It's fiction. So even if it describes me, because I have taken fictional license with it, it is fiction. Okay. बस.
हाँ, अभी और सवाल आपको मिल जाएंगे ऐसे जवाब.
Daisy, चलिए Daisy का मैं फिर बताऊँ.
One question here. गीतांजलि, मैं पूछना चाहता हूँ कि आपका जो नॉवेल इंग्लिश में ट्रांसलेट हुआ है.
हाँ, मैं कहाँ गए, मैं देखी नहीं.
वो देखिए. हाँ, आप खड़े हो जाएंगे तो आपको सबको आसानी होगी थोड़ी सी.
मैं पूछ रहा था कि जो ट्रांसलेशन आपका हुआ है, आपको क्या लगता है? I mean, are you happy with it completely the way you have written? जो इमोशंस आपको चाहिए, जो आपने हिंदी में डाले हैं, क्या वो इंग्लिश में आए हैं पूरी तरह?
अच्छा, मैं दोनों बातों का जल्दी से एक तो जवाब दे दूं कि डेजी के पास मैं नहीं गई थी. डेजी और पब्लिशर मेरे पास आए थे. मैं इस मामले में बहुत खुशनसीब रही हूँ कि the publisher, there was some publisher in London who wanted to publish something of mine, and they asked if this book has not been translated, can they do it? And I said, why not? And she said, we have a translator in mind and she'll send you a sample and you see if you can work with her. And Daisy sent me a sample and I loved that very much. I thought, here's somebody I can work with. And then we did it. अब आप पूछ रहे हैं कि am I satisfied with it? तो देखिए, एक तो ये होता है कि there's nothing, completely fixed in any work. कि वो बिल्कुल ये है और यही होना चाहिए, मैं ही नहीं जानती क्या है. So, but that's only one way of saying it. I think the main point is that every language, every time the book comes in some other language, it brings in something else. If it's a good translation, it will not, there will be some, let us say, ethical parameters within which it will be playing with the text. It's not an adaptation, it is a translation. But it's not a literal translation. It brings another temperature, another breath, another tonality to the work. And that is what Daisy has done. Now suppose it was not Daisy, somebody who was very good at the language but did not have humor, did not have the kind of sensibility, or I feel a kind of certain play with language, that love that I have for language or humor and so on and so forth. Suppose Daisy was a person like that, she would have ruined that translation. But no, she loved the language, she loved the humor, and she did a parallel play which was within what the book is about. And that is why I think it worked wonderfully.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good evening. Good evening, Geetanjali ma'am, and here.
हाँ, यहाँ पे.
I am so overwhelmed to be here today and listening to you. And like Varun talked about that, he gets goosebumps. I'm still getting goosebumps. And when I read every chapter so many times, and I have read it so many times, and every time, I get those goosebumps. My question is about the narrative, that you have brought in forward, and it is so amazing. I wanted to ask you a specific question. What I have noticed, maybe this might be a wrong observation, but I wanted to put it forward. For the larger part of the story, all the main protagonists which are in the book, they don't have names. They are just kind of referred by Amma, Bade, Darwaza, and so many other things. So those are kind of, entitled to be some objects or somebody, and like Rosie, who is not part of the mundane, but, somebody the world needs to recognize, acknowledge. You have given those specific names to them. And some very ordinary, not very important characters in the book have names. Just wanted to ask you, did you have something in your mind? Why did you brought this kind of narrative? And how important this role plays when you write a story?
Someone who's a mind expert has to take out my mind and examine it and sort of figure out how it works. Because I myself am quite, I don't really know. There's something mysterious about the creative process, that's one thing. And the other is, there's one word, मैं हिंदी वाला इस्तेमाल करूँगी, खिलवाड़, a certain play, which people underestimate in, when they talk of creative work, art and literature, they don't talk about the, playfulness of the person who's trying to make something, the playfulness in the process. So a lot of these things happen, playfully. There must be a logic which I think worked without my planning it so. And I think what has happened is that usually those who did not become, carriers of an individual story, but were rather in the book as for the social role they were playing, they remained defined by their social role, So the elder, the son, the daughter-in-law, they didn't get names. But those who became, carriers of an individual story, like Amma, her name came in at some point, and Rosie, who I think needed to be named to somehow highlight the story of a third gender. So some such workings in my mind, but I also need to look at it.
Thank you. Sorry, I think we are... okay, one last question. We have been asked to wrap up, so yeah.
गीतांजलि जी, बधाई हो आपको कि आपने हिंदी को अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर ख्याति प्राप्त करवाई है। जब से आपको बुकर प्राइज़ मिला है, हिंदी लेखक और साहित्यकारों के लिए बहुत खुशी की बात है। और भारत के लोग ये सोचने लगे कि अब राष्ट्रभाषा भी हो जाएगी, और विदेश में जो लोग रह रहे हैं उनको लगता है कि संयुक्त राष्ट्र की भाषा भी हिंदी आधिकारिक भाषा हो जाएगी। हमने पढ़ा जब से शुरू से जो प्रक्रिया चल रही थी बुकर प्राइज़ को लेकर कि अंतिम 13 में आपकी पुस्तक आ गई 2.5 महीने पहले। उसके बाद सभी ने, भारतवासियों ने भी प्रार्थना की, शुभकामनाएं दी, जिसमें मैंने भी एक लिखा था आपको, और अंततः आपको बुकर प्राइज़ मिला। तो ये जो 4-6 महीने का जो प्रोसेस है बुकर को, ये थोड़ा सा आप अपना संक्षिप्त बताएं।
बुकर तक पहुंचने, बुकर अनाउंसमेंट से लेकर, लॉन्ग लिस्ट से लेकर जब तक आपको मिला, इसके प्रोसेस।
अब मैं क्या जानूँ उस प्रोसेस को, मैं तो उसमें मैं तो उस दौड़ में शामिल हुई नहीं थी ना। किसी को मेरी किताब कहीं से वहाँ पहुँची है, मुझे तो बस खबर मिली है, मुझे नहीं पता वो।
नहीं, अंतिम 13 के बाद भी चल रहा था ना कि आपको मिलने वाला है, तो आपके मन में क्या चल रहा था?
मेरे मन में था कि ये सब बकवास बातें मत करो। अच्छा। कि जो मिला है बहुत अच्छा है, और मुझे उसके लिए क्या करना है। मैं जो करती हूँ मैं करती हूँ, मैं लिखती हूँ मैं लिखती रहूँगी। बाकी ये मेरे हाथ में थोड़ी है, जिसको करना है वो करेंगे, मैं थोड़ी कर रही हूँ।
थैंक यू। So on that note, we've been asked, there is a monitor which says please wrap up, otherwise उसमें वो एक तीर निकलेगा, मेरे पैर में लगेगा. So I'll just wrap up with one of the most beautiful observations, observations, insights. It is an insight. I never thought of borders like this. सरहद पे एक छोटी सी 4 लाइनें मैं पढ़ूंगा, उसके बाद हम आपसे विदा लेंगे. सरहद, माँ कहती है, सरहद, जानते हो सरहद क्या होती है? बॉर्डर. क्या होता है बॉर्डर? वजूद का घेरा होता है, किसी शख्सियत की टेक होता है, कितनी ही बड़ी कितनी ही छोटी, रुमाल की किनारी, मेज़पोश का बॉर्डर, मेरी दोहर को समेटती कढ़ाई, आसमान की सरहद, इस बगिया की क्यारी, खेतों की मेड़, इस छत की मुंडेर, तस्वीर का फ्रेम. सरहद तो हर चीज़ की है. अरे लेकिन सरहद निकालने के लिए नहीं होती. सो अ border does not exist to limit things or to separate them. दोनों तरफ को, the either sides, सरहद दोनों तरफ को और उजालने के लिए होती है. To bring things into focus, to bring things, to mark them as identities. And that's what, I think that's the humanity of this novel, humanism of this novel, that it talks about a global citizenship through the journey of an 80-year-old woman who just decides to not follow any borders. So thank you Geetanjali Shree ji for this beautiful book. And I'm sure जो अंग्रेजी अनुवाद है Tomb of Sand is beautiful, but if you can read Hindi, or if you are within the within Hindi, as in within whatever touching distance of Hindi, कि आप सीख सकते हैं, आप मेहनत करके पढ़ सकते हैं, तो प्लीज़ आप हिंदी में पढ़ें. आप कभी भी इस अनुभव को नहीं भूलेंगे अपने जीवन में. थैंक यू वंस अगेन गीतांजलि श्री जी, एंड कॉन्ग्रेचुलेशंस वंस अगेन फॉर International Booker, and I hope you don't have to win another to come back in NCPA or be invited to NCPA. Thank you. Thank you.